Hey everybody, welcome to Luxury Now. Today, we're going to go over the top 10 richest countries in the world by GDP. Make sure to watch until number 1, because it's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen. 10. Canada, $1.73 trillion. With the exception of a few small island nations in the Caribbean, Canada is the only North American country to run under a parliamentary government. Their parliamentary government, combined with being closely integrated with the American economy, makes them unique compared to any other country in the world. Canada is well known for having an extensive social welfare system, which was created after World War II. Canada is also well noted for having some of the highest levels of economic freedom in the world. International trade is a huge factor for the Canadian economy, especially when it comes to natural resources, which the country is extremely abundant in. Natural resources, which includes agriculture, energy, lumber, and mining, make up an astounding 58% of all exports. The United States, which borders Canada to the south, is Canada's largest trading partner, which takes in 73% of all Canadian exports. 9. Brazil, $1.85 trillion. Brazil is currently the largest economy in South America. From 2000 to 2012, Brazil was amongst the fastest growing economies in the world, with an average GDP growth rate of 5% each year. However, this came to a halt in 2014, when Brazil experienced an economic recession. This nation of over 100 million people slowly began to recover in 2017. Brazil's economy has come a very long way since its creation as a colony that focused on exporting sugar, gold, and cotton. Since then, Brazil has significantly diversified their economy. One of the ways Brazil has diversified their economy is by exporting steel, of which Brazil is amongst the top exporters in the world. Unfortunately, even with one of the highest GDPs in the world, Brazil still faces many economic hardships, such as an increasing poverty levels, a growing income gap between the rich and poor, and a high unemployment rate. 8. Italy, $1.99 trillion. Italy is home to the third largest economy in the European Union, which Italy makes roughly 60% of its exports with. Unlike the previous countries listed so far, Italy earns most of their GDP from manufacturing. The most popular items manufactured in Italy are machinery, vehicles, pharmaceuticals, furniture, clothing, and robots. Italy is also the European hub for luxury goods such as clothing, vehicles, and designer watches. Italy's high GDP comes with great advantages, such as a high standard of living and the 8th highest quality of life worldwide compared to all other countries. Even with these amazing advantages, Italy still suffers from issues such as a recession in the late 2000s, a massive amount of government spending, which dates as far back as the 80s, which has led to a tremendous amount of national debt and a fairly high unemployment rate. 7. France, $2.71 trillion. France, being the third most visited country in the world, claims the third highest GDP in all of Europe and the 7th highest GDP in the world of $2.71 trillion. Just like Italy, France has a very high standard of living. Unfortunately, it's not all positive for France. Economic growth has slowed down and unemployment has risen. Like I mentioned earlier, France is the most visited country in the world, which means that France relies heavily on tourism. Besides tourism, France relies heavily on agriculture, as they are the leading agricultural producer in the European Union and the 6th largest agricultural producer in the world. 6. United Kingdom, $2.83 trillion. With a GDP of $2.83 trillion, the United Kingdom is the nation with the 6th highest GDP in the world. From 1992 to 2008, the United Kingdom experienced a growth in GDP every quarter. This streak ended in April of 2008, and the economy experienced a decline of 6%. The economy of the UK is primarily driven by the services sector, which contributes more than 75% of its GDP, with manufacturing the second prominent segment, followed by agriculture. Although agriculture is not a major contributor to its GDP, 60% of the UK's food needs are produced domestically, even though less than 2% of its labour force is employed in the sector. 5. India, $2.94 trillion. India is now the fastest growing economy of any country which has a GDP of $1 trillion or more. India is growing so fast that they recently jumped ahead of the United Kingdom and France to claim the number 5 spot on our list. The GDP of India is expected to go up at least 7.5% per year in the future. Upon India gaining independence from the United Kingdom in 1947, the economy of India was primarily centered around agriculture. Since then, the economy has greatly diversified to things such as their service sector, which is the fastest growing sector in the world, contributes 60% of the GDP, and employs 28% of all workers in India. Manufacturing is also a fast-growing sector in India, which has led to a decline in agriculture in India. Although the importance of agriculture has greatly declined in India, agriculture still makes up 17% of the nation's GDP, which is very high considering their high GDP. 4. Germany, $3.86 trillion. Germany is currently the largest and strongest economy in all of Europe. This gives Germany a GDP of almost $4 trillion and the fourth largest GDP on Earth. The nation has been dependent upon capital good exports, which suffered a setback post-2008 financial crisis. The economy grew by 2.2% and 2.5% in 2016 and 2017, respectively. However, the IMF says this slipped to 1.5% and 0.5% in 2018 and 2019, respectively. To bolster its manufacturing strength in the current global scenario, Germany has launched Industry 4.0, its strategic initiative to establish the country as a lead market and provider of advanced manufacturing solutions. 3. Japan, $5.15 trillion. Japan is currently home to the third largest economy in the world, with a GDP of $5.15 trillion. Japan crossed the $5 trillion mark in 2019. Like many countries across the world, Japan was hit hard by the 2008 financial crisis. The global crisis triggered a recession, followed by weak domestic demand and huge public debt. When the economy was beginning to recover, it suffered a massive earthquake, which hit the country socially and economically. While the economy has broken a deflationary spiral, economic growth remains stunted. 2. China, $14.14 trillion. Home to the largest economy in Asia and the second largest economy in the world, China has a humongous GDP of $14.14 trillion. In recent decades, China has experienced a dramatic increase in their GDP. This comes as a result of being the manufacturing capital of the world. Back in 1980, China was the 7th largest economy, with a GDP of $305.35 billion, while the size of the US then was $2.86 trillion. Since it initiated market reforms in 1978, the Asian giant has seen an economic growth averaging 10% annually. In recent years, the pace of growth has slowed, although it remains high in comparison to its peer nations. China is expected to grow at a rate of somewhere in between 5 to 6% each year for the next several years, narrowing the gap between themselves and the number 1 spot. 1. United States of America, $21.44 trillion. The US has retained its position of being the world's largest economy since 1871. That's a long time. The size of the American economy was estimated to be at $20.58 trillion in 2018 in nominal terms, and is expected to reach $22.32 trillion in 2020. The US is often dubbed as an economic superpower, and that's because the economy constitutes almost a quarter of the global economy, backed by advanced infrastructure, technology, and an abundance of natural resources. When it comes to purchasing power, the United States is no longer the most powerful country in the world. The United States of America lost their number 1 position to China, who has a population which is around 4 times the size of the United States. By 2023, the GDP gap between China and the United States is supposed to narrow by around $2 trillion. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos of luxury lifestyles and much more. Check out this playlist of my top 10 videos of all time. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.